most empires die with a bang. Rome crumbled under barbarian invasions. The Ottomans shattered in World War I. The Soviet Union collapsed in a single dramatic year. But some empires die differently. They don't fall. They faith. They stay powerful on paper. Still wealthy. Still militarily strong. Still technically advanced. But they stop mattering. Right now, in rooms across Beijing, Chinese scholars are watching the West with notebooks and timers. They're not waiting for a war. They're waiting for a pattern. Because in China's view, the West isn't headed for some dramatic collapse. It's doing something far more dangerous. It's following the exact same script that every dominant power in history has followed before it fell apart. And China has been studying that script for thousands of years. Chinese historians don't study history to feel good about their culture. They study it like engineers study bridge collapses. What went wrong? What were the warning signs? Most importantly, are we seeing those same signs anywhere else? Right now, when they look at the West, the answer is yes. According to research by Jiang Wang, a scholar examining how historical memory shapes policy, China's identity is built on one core lesson from history. China views its national identity through the lens of a century of humiliation. From the Opium Wars through the end of the Sino-Japanese War. They remember what happens when a civilization gets comfortable, when it stops adapting, when it believes its own propaganda. They watch their own empire crumble under that exact illusion. So now they're watching the West, and they're seeing the pattern repeat, the Rome obsession. Let me tell you why Chinese scholars are obsessed with Rome. Not because Rome was great. Because Rome showed them exactly how a superpower dies without anyone noticing it's dying. Rome didn't collapse overnight. For centuries, Rome looked fine on paper. Big military, lots of territory. Impressive monuments. But underneath, it was routing. The wealth was concentrating at the top. The middle class was disappearing. Political factions started treating each other like enemies. The borders were the military relied more and more on foreigners to do the actual fighting. What kills empires is not external enemies, but internal decay that makes you too weak to do anything about external threats. Walter Scheidel found that throughout history, inequality has been a defining feature of civilization, and only violent events significantly lessened it. Rome had massive inequality. The elites hoarded wealth while everyone else struggled. It got worse until the whole system collapsed. China looks at this and sees a lesson. Empires don't fall to barbarians. They hollow out first. Then the barbarians just walk in. The Britain, warning. Then there's Britain. For Chinese strategists, Britain is the really scary example. Because Britain shows that even a country that dominates the entire world can lose it all within a single human lifetime. In 1900, Britain controlled a quarter of the planet. They had the world's largest navy. They controlled global trade routes. They set the rules for how international relations worked. If you'd asked anyone in 1900 if Britain would still be a superpower in 50 years, they'd have laughed at you for even asking. By 1950, it was over. The empire was being dismantled piece by piece. The economic dominance was gone. Britain had gone from setting the rules to begging America for loans. What happened? Britain made the same mistakes Rome made. According to research, Britain dominated trade and controlled sea lanes while believing itself indispensable. Then debt exploded, and industrial capacity fell behind. The power that seemed permanent evaporated in one generation. For China, Britain proves something critical. You don't need to lose a war to lose your empire. You just need to stop being able to sustain it. And the warning signs are subtle, until suddenly they're not. The West today. Now let's talk about what makes Chinese strategists really pay attention. The West today is showing the same symptoms. First, internal fragmentation. The political system is paralyzed. Left and right aren't just disagreeing. They see each other as existential threats. Trust in institutions is collapsing. Research suggests America is entering an age of discord, similar to the period before the Civil War. China looks at this and sees a civilization fighting itself. And a civilization fighting itself cannot lead others. That's not propaganda. That's just history. Second, financialization over production. The West makes money from money now, not from making things. The actual production, the factories, the supply chains, they've been outsourced. What's left is banking, finance, trading derivatives of derivatives. China calls this late-stage imperial economics. It happens when an elite class figures out they can get rich without actually building anything. When your economy is about extraction rather than creation, the system becomes fragile. One shock, and it all falls apart. Third, moral universalism fatigue. For decades, the West exported its values: democracy, human rights, free markets. It insisted on them. But then the West stopped following its own rules. The financial crisis showed free markets weren't working. Wars showed democracy couldn't be installed by force. China's view is that the West overextended its values and imposed norms it no longer upholds, losing credibility abroad. First, people stop believing in your moral authority. Then your political authority. Then your economic authority. It's a cascade, not a collapse of fate. But here's what's really important to understand about China's view. They don't think the West is going to collapse tomorrow. They're not expecting some dramatic fall. Armies marching through streets. Governments overthrown. They think something worse is going to happen. They think the West is going to stagnate, fragment, lose coherence, lose initiative. Keep existing but stop mattering. Not a collapse. Slow faith. Still powerful on paper, but unable to actually use that power effectively. Still wealthy in aggregate, but with wealth concentrated in unstable ways. Still technically advanced, but losing the ability to translate that into geopolitical influence. That's the nightmare scenario from a Chinese perspective. Because a declining power that doesn't realize it's declining is dangerous. It makes desperate moves. It doubles down on failed strategies. It tries to freeze the world in place rather than adapting to change. Why China is patient. This view of Western decline is inevitable, and Patrick explains basically everything about Chinese strategy right now. Paciencia. Western analysts constantly ask why China doesn't just make aggressive moves to assert dominance. The answer: they don't need to. If you believe time is on your side, if you believe your rival is following a predictable pattern of decline, you don't rush. You wait. You build. You let them make the mistakes while you avoid making your own. The long-term planning. China plans in 30-year increments, 50-year increments, even 100-year increments. Western politicians can barely think past the next election. This isn't because Chinese leaders are smarter. It's because they're operating from a completely different theory of history. If you believe in cycles, you plan for the long cycle. You don't chase short-term gains that might disrupt your position in the long pattern. The focus on endurance over dominance. China isn't trying to replace America as the world's policeman. They're just trying to outlast the current system. They saw what happened to the Soviet Union when it tried to compete directly. It burned itself out trying to match spending and lost. China learned from that. Don't compete on their terms. Compete on time. According to research by Zhang Wang, historical memory serves as a major motivating factor in Chinese international conflict. China's entire strategic framework is built on not repeating the mistakes that led to their century of humiliation. The pattern repeats. So when China looks at the West today, they see Rome, they see Britain, they see every empire that believed it was the exception, that believed the rules didn't apply, and then discovered they were wrong. The West can dismiss this as propaganda, but dismissing it doesn't change the fact that the pattern has repeated over and over. If this changed how you see the global power shift, hit that like button and subscribe to Access Lens for more stories. Next one's ready. Don't miss it. Don't miss it.